So World War One is over, and it was not a pleasant war by any stretch of the imagination. It brings up basically all the worst in humanity, and so coming out of that, humanity is going to change a little bit. Long-held beliefs, social, cultural, or political, are being questioned. Some of the work had begun before the war along many of these things, but now it's going to change. Young people had become disillusioned with a lot of things. It's kind of called the lost generation, this time in between World War One and World War Two. The war was supposed to be quick, adventurous, great, but they figured out modern warfare was brutal. The book was written in 1920 by Oswald Spengler, The Decline of the West in 1920. There's gloomy predictions about the future, and this is seen all over the place. This picture over here on the left illustrates this. This represents the people who had died during the war. Gloomy predictions about the future. Predictions that European had entered in the final stage of humanity's existence. The belief had been that science and technology had held all the answers. That belief is tarnished. There had been too much blood and guts caused by human inventions. The spread of male suffrage, women's suffrage, and education. And average people saw the corruption and just ineffective governments, and they're disillusioned and they don't like democracy. That people are like, wait, democracy brought us this. The tyranny of the average person, the rule of the inferior were two of the phrases that came out of this. Even Christian theology is going to change. Karl Barth attacked the belief to believe in the limitless improvement of the realization of God's purpose. In other words, that maybe we can understand everything about God. And that more and more negative views of how humans basically spread through every walk of life. Three kind of changes of how we start to look at science and technology and understanding human beings differently are here. The first one is Albert Einstein, theory of relativity. Looked at space and time are not absolutes. That was an incredibly new concept. That the concept of time not being absolute, his E equals mc squared with energy, the fact that if you time travel, time will literally change as you move forward. Everything is relative to how a person is measuring them. That causes an immense amount of change. To go even further, let's look at Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in 1927. And he basically says, can we be absolutely sure about anything? Because the very fact we're looking at it, does that mean it changes? So, you listening to this podcast, will this podcast be different because you are listening to it? Challenges. Think about this. The fact, because you exist, does that mean we can know anything? Is basically what the principle is getting at. Because you are looking at it, does that affect it? So, does cause and effect exist? And last one is Sigmund Freud with just basically the theory of psychology. Basically, are there mechanisms that the conscious brain and the unconscious brain work together to keep painful memories and threatening events away from the consciousness? I mean, he's got some really interesting ideas, but as a whole, all three of these people and their things illustrate that we are learning new things about the world, and everybody is challenging new things about the world. How about art and architecture? You see growth of expressionism and cubist extraction, because here comes photography. And why do you have photography, or why are you painting real art? Why are you painting this realism if photography can do that? So you see new creative means come into play. They're looking at beauty and just trying to find different ways. Down here, this picture in the lower left, and I'll be honest, I don't remember who I got it from, but that's not the important part. The important part is this reality? You have a clock bent. You have clocks and time, and you start to see that art is not about realism anymore. It's about expression. It's about expression because photography can do all the realist stuff. Now, because also we have so much more world interaction, art is going to be changing. And you have French that are inspired by Japanese, Germans and Americans inspired by indigenous art. You have Picasso, who paints this, was inspired by African art, and I will move myself. This is Cubism. And what this art is it's meant after, it's the Spanish Civil War in 1937. Picasso, the Nazis are going to come in and help bomb in support of fascists in Spain. and just this brutal scene is shown. So this shows a ton of stuff that, hey, war is brutal. You have changes. You have Africans influencing Europeans. Tons of changes going on. So then the last piece of this, along similar lines, architecture should be a meeting of engineering and art. In other words, more expressionism, more art, simple shapes, but maybe inspired by glass, steel frames. Buildings are going to go higher. Steel skyscrapers are going to start coming out of here. It comes out of Germany, and then it's going to spread from there. And so, as a whole, what you should realize from this is we start to see just changes in human mindset and human growth because of what happened post war. We are challenging everything, challenging literally every belief that had taken place. And then what that happens is there's a change in how we express ourselves, and it becomes way more creative as opposed to just looking at the realistic side of things. Because now we have photography to take care of the realistic side of things.